Today is for all my astrology lovers. I am a double Leo with a Virgo moon. You probably know that already. My guest today is the one and only Moon Chola, an astrologer, tarot reader, cosmic truth teller.
Let's look at your chart. Let's look at what some of the wounds are that you're dealing with in this relationship. And sure, like maybe you will or won't stay with this person, but let's more get into like how we can start to heal the part of you that's allowing and tolerating stuff that's making you unhappy.
They blend ancestral wisdom with modern intuition. They turn the stars into mirrors for self-discovery. Their storytelling is incredible, y'all. Expect laughter, revelation, and maybe a little bit of faith. And after this, I'm sure you are going to want to book a session. I know I did as soon as our conversation ended. So I'll drop a link with all the info. All right, peace. Can we start the very basic but a beautiful way? Who are you today?
Hi, my name's Blanca Espinosa, but I also go by Moon Chola on Instagram. Tarot reader, astrologer, artist of many different types. Yeah, that's me.
Where does Moon Chola come from? And how was that not taken? I love it.
It's actually really funny because a friend gave me that as a joke. Because I was like telling him I was working at a restaurant as a waitress and bartender, and I told him like, oh yeah, like we did this like moon ritual, we burned candles, like about me and like a group of friends. And then I was telling him like all the different people that were there, and he's like, damn, sounds like you're just being like a moon chola that night. And then as a joke, it was like moon chola, moon chola. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna take it. So it was actually my friend Angel Lizaraga. He gets the credit for giving me that name as a joke that actually ended up working out.
But you claimed it.
I claimed it. It just worked,
When did you open the door to astrology readings? What turned you on about that? And you were like, yo, I'm into this.
Yeah, I actually, when I was like, I want to say 12.
Oh, early.
I was at the Goodwill and I found this like fat book. It's called Love Signs by Linda Goodman. And in the book, it has like descriptions of the signs, but also it had like about relationships. So it would be like, what is an Aries with a Libra like? And then what is an Aries man and a Libra woman? A Libra man and an Aries woman. And I would read, through all of them. And I would like pick out people in my life. Like my parents are Capricorns. So I would read the whole Capricorn one all the way through, right? Or my sisters or whatever. And I would see that she would do this really cute like dialogue that kind of was like Peter Pan-esque. And I'm a Libra. So I read the Capricorn and Libra, and there was one about them going shopping and how the Libra was like, look at this shirt. It's so pretty. And then the Capricorn's like, but how much is it? And the Libra's like, what do you mean? It's beautiful. Like it's worth whatever it is. And the Capricorn's like, yeah, but is it practical? How much is it? And I was like, I've been through this. So that was like my initial kind of like, this is real. And I became that person that would ask people their sign. And growing up, this was what, like early 2000s. It was like a party trick that I would do, but that a lot of people would kind of clown me for, because everyone thought it was like this pseudo thing that I was in, like, oh, you're into horoscopes. That's what they would say. Oh, you're into horoscopes. But I'm like, me learning about your astrology is not a horoscope. A horoscope is like a prediction for how your day is going to go, which is a completely different thing. Your zodiac, your astrology has to do with your personality type. So I delved in at that point. And then like in my early 20s, it was legit a party trick. Like I'd go out with my friends. People would tell me their signs. I'd be like, oh, you're like this. Oh, you're like that. Oh, you're like this. And then I started to dabble into tarot, and I saw just so many layers of correlation between all of the astrology. Oh, at the time too, I was also into Greek like mythology. So my affinity towards Greek mythology, and then astrology and the archetypes, and then tarot, which all kind of married. I was like, oh, this is super cinch. Like it's super easy for me to understand like what the cards are saying, because I already had archetypes, stories, catalogs in my brain. And so around 2017, I started to do it more like for friends, for people online. And then it wasn't until COVID that it just exploded. Like everybody wanted to know about their sign. Everybody wanted to know what was going on in their lives. Everybody was like, blown away by stuff. Even friends that I had for a long time that knew I kind of was into it, they were like, how do you know so much? Like, how do you know so many of these things? And I'm like, dude, I've been like deep in this world without people knowing since I was a teen.
It is a study. Like, you know, my homie's into it, and just the other day, I mean, we're at the climbing gym and he's like looking at my chart. We're at the climbing gym because he's got this whole app that has everyone in his life's chart. And he's teaching himself, you know, you might know what these things mean, but he took it out of the main houses and put it into Placidus.
Okay, yeah.
And he was like, and I'm learning this thing about Placidus, and he told me all these things. And
yeah.
Let me ask first, what do you think horoscopes are bullshit? You hate horoscopes? You're like, or horoscopes is for...
So I was anti-horoscopes for a minute because people immediately correlated astrology with horoscopes. So it used to irritate me. Like one of my good friends, Peter Mendoza, he is a super Virgo. And he used to always be like, you're into horoscopes. I'm like, no, dude, it's not horoscopes. But he would always say horoscopes. So for a while, I was like, I don't like horoscopes. As I have, when I do tarot, so if you see my content online, those are horoscopes. That's me saying like, yo, this is what's going on right now. This is what's challenging you. This is the best way through this. And here's are some options for where this can go. That's horoscopes. So I don't think it's bullshit. I think that when it's done right, it can be extremely helpful because in astrology, right, you have your chart. So like you were learning about the chart, right, which is essentially a snapshot of the sky the moment that you were born. But in the chart, the earth is the center point. So everything around the earth point is like, from our perspective, where was everything in the sky? So for me, the sun was in alignment with the zodiac sign Libra, which makes me a Libra sun. Right. And so you look at the snapshot, which is like your little cosmic print, right? And that in itself is going to give you so much information about who you are, what hurts you, where you're going, how to motivate yourself. And then there's where the stars are right now. Where is everything in the sky? Which I usually will consider like the weather. Like, what's the astrology weather right now? You have a particular chart and I have a particular chart. For me, the weather, where the sun is, where Mercury is, where Venus is, might be something that's really helpful for me right now because of my particular print. You have your own chart. It might be different. For you, this might be more active in career, where for me, it might be more active in relationships. And so in astrology, you can use the weather, the current stars, put them up against your chart and see how they're being affected. And then look at where are these things going to sort of predict like, hey, there's this big like precipice point that's coming, let's say in 6 months, that you can capitalize on if you start to prepare now. Because sometimes people feel like intuitively, like, I feel like I should start this business, or I feel like I should start this podcast or whatever. And they don't listen to that like inspired action. But then when we go through their chart, I'm like, yo, you have this like spotlight that's going to hit you in April. Why not build it now? So when you have that Jupiter conjunct Jupiter or Jupiter in the first house, you can capitalize it. Because otherwise, you'll still have like those moments of people loving on you and shining on you, but you won't be able to build on it. It'll just be like a good season where you're like, that was great. That was such a good time, but you didn't actually utilize it. You know what I mean? So astrologies are not bullshit when they're done right and you're taking into account like the math of it, you know?
Do you know the astrologer Rob Bresney?
I've seen some of his work. Yeah.
He does these horoscopes that I think are like poetry. Like,
Yeah.
I just think the writing is so stunning. Like, sometimes I just read it just for the simple fact of these metaphors, these things, you know. That's the sort of joy I get at the storytelling of it. And so how do you tell the story, right? That's what you're doing online. You're telling these stories. People really like the way you tell the story. Why do they like the way you tell the story versus someone else?
It's funny because I actually, one of the main things that people tell me is they'll say like, I really liked your vibe, right? I am an Aries rising, so I'm very direct. I don't like to sugarcoat things. I tend to like kind of call people out a lot. And I think one of my main goals when I first started was like, I want to speak the language of people like me. Like I want to speak the language of people that were raised up in like in the hood, or like with families that had a lot of drama and a lot of emotional complexity, and it wasn't like vanilla black and white type stuff. And so I feel like people are attracted to my directness, but also like my willingness to let it be like a little bit ugly, not necessarily vulgar, a little bit harsh, but not mean. Even though sometimes I get accused of being a little bit mean, I've learned to kind of curve that a little bit. And then a big value that I have with this work is that I love to educate people. So when people come to me for a reading, a lot of times they're like, I want to know, like, am I going to stay with this person? Should I be with this person?
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, like sure, I can pull cards and be like, all right, you know, let me tap in. When I'm doing cards, I'm doing mediumship. I'm talking to their guides. I'm talking to my guides, and sometimes they have a very direct response. And usually, whatever I'm saying, they are already feeling. But also, I try to go like, well, like let's look at your chart. Let's look at what some of the wounds are that you're dealing with in this relationship. And sure, like maybe you will or won't stay with this person, but let's more get into like how we can start to heal the part of you that's allowing and tolerating stuff that's making you unhappy.
Mm.
And so trying to visually show them, I look at their Mercury placement so I can understand how to speak to them, because different Mercury placements are gonna, some, you know, Mercury in Pisces, you're gonna like storytelling. Mercury in Gemini, you're gonna like information. You're gonna want like specific tools. So I'll sometimes like adapt for what I see their Mercury placement is so that I can get in there. You know what I mean?
So I personally I see how you're combining it, but I put, you know, I live in Los Angeles, and I do think, yeah, maybe it's the pandemic, but everyone and their mother knows their rising and their moon and their, you know, and their sun. And it's the first question, right? Like, you know, hey, what are you? But I put tarot and astrology in separate camps. You're sort of using them together. But can we talk about tarot as an individual practice? Like, what brought you there? How does that work? Is it just, I think people are well more versed on astrology than they are on the deck.
So I honestly couldn't tell you how I got my first deck. I think I was just like on a whim. And the tarot, it's called the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, because Pamela Smith is the one that designed all of the images on it. And she had something called synesthesia, which is like when people can see colors, right? Or like hear colors and things like that, where there's like this combination of psychic abilities where the senses also create images. And so a lot of her images contain a lot of these different vibrations, right? And so I studied a little bit of Pamela Smith. When I first started, I looked at the cards, what they meant. And my first, of course, like I said, my first instinct was this is super correlated to astrology because there's elements. There's water, fire, earth, and air, which is water is the cups, fire is the wands, earth is the pentacles, and air is the swords, right? So you have the elements. And then the major arcana is major archetypes, right? And there's like when you also kind of delve into arcanas, you can look at like Jungian tarot, like how do the archetypes play out? What season of life are you in? Are you the fool? Are you taking that leap, starting a journey? Are you the hermit? Are you taking a break and gathering your wisdom, right? So you're combining those two kind of ideas. And then for me, tarot opened up my psychic abilities. Because once I started to pull cards, I started to activate like my claircognizance, and I would just know things. So I want to say there's 5 clairs, but I might be wrong. There's 6, but there's clairvoyance, which is I see things like That's So Raven, right? Where it's like, I have a vision. There's claircognizance, which is like, I just know. And I feel like a lot of parents tend to have claircognizance. And like
Claircognizance.
something's going on with my kid. I better call, like that's like claircognizance. Clairsentience is for people who feel. So when you're like, I feel like, usually you hear people that have clairsentience, they'll say things like that, like, I feel like something's going to happen, or I feel worried about something. Like they feel it in their body, but it's a psychic ability that you can tap. Clairsentience, clairgustance, which is like you taste things, you smell things that inform your psychic abilities. And then
Wow.
clairaudience, which is hearing voices or hearing messages through songs, things like that. Right. My first experience with my psychic abilities was clairaudience. And then it kind of like what strengthened the most was claircognizance, where I'll just be pulling and like, yeah, the images are giving me kind of like a flash of what the theme is. So let's say it's the Two of Cups. It's a couple. And I see the couple, but then my claircognizance tells me like there's like you're not seeing eye to eye. Versus I might see the Two of Cups, I'm talking to someone and I see a really joined union. I see them cheersing instead of like looking each other down. And that's where my claircognizance will tell me, no, it's this one or it's that one.
Cool.
Right. So tarot opened that up in combination with like a bunch of other things. But so now when I do that, I try to teach people, when I teach tarot, I do like give a little bit of astrology, but what I try to teach people is how to put yourself in the card. So like if you were in that card, what character would you be? What does the air feel like? Do you feel upset? Do you feel happy? Do you feel like tense? Do you feel relaxed? Like what are some of the sensory experiences that you're getting? When you see the Justice card and she's sitting there, are you trying to make a decision, or are you in the card looking at the Justice card and she's making the decision for you? So I'll try to kind of, it's almost like doing like acting workshops where I try to get people, put themselves in these imaginary circumstances as themselves so that they can start to receive the feedback from whatever their psychic ability is.
Are you pulling your own cards every day?
I do not pull my own cards.
Ever.
It's really hard to read for yourself. Sometimes I try and I might pull like one card and be like, what's the one thing I need to focus on? Or I'll pull an oracle card. But doing a reading for myself, my own ego, my own brain, it will take over. Yeah.
But you feel like with astrology, it wouldn't be that way because it is what it is. The stars are what they are, so you can't get in your own way on it.
It's a little bit easier with astrology. I could look at the stars and be like, oh, like right now I have a transit. Mars is in Scorpio. My Pluto's in Scorpio. And this is kind of for everyone in my generation. We're all going to hit this like transit because we all have Pluto and Scorpio, just at different times. Mars is an aggressive, combative energy. And I love Mars. I'm Aries rising. It's my chart ruler. And then Pluto is like transformation, death, rebirth. And so when they come conjunct, there's usually like a head-butting type of energy that happens. So I know that for these next couple weeks, I have to mind my words. I have to be mindful if I'm going to get into an argument or if I'm going to defend or push something or, stand for something, that I better fucking mean it, because I'm literally going up against Pluto right now in my chart. So I know that, but I don't know specifically who it's going to be with or when. If it's going to happen in the morning, at night, that's a little harder.
I was gifted this tarot card session once with this man who is fairly well known in that world, and I was going through a really hard time, and this guy, his name is Guy, actually. This person named Guy got me this gift.
Love it.
To get this tarot card reading. And the tarot card reader said, I can teach anyone to predict the future. The real skill here is understanding why it's happening. He would say, what's coming is coming. Our job as healers is to allow people to understand why it is this is going to take place. Do you vibe with that? You disagree with that?
I totally and completely agree. I totally agree. In your chart, you have something called Chiron. and it's the wounded healer. So the Greek mythology is that Chiron was the healer of all the gods. So they go to war against each other. He would come and he knew what herbs and what things to do to heal you. And then Apollo made an arrow that could wound Chiron and wounded him. And he wasn't able to heal. So he became the wounded healer. But this wound gave him an ability to have better empathy and better understanding of other people and their pain. And so in our chart, we have the Chiron, and it's our wound. And in whatever house it's in, definitely is where it's prominent. And if it's aspecting anything or close to anything, those things are going to also have like some conversation with it. But that wound will give you so much information about why you're going through things and whether or not you're like actually tapping into like your healing. So what year were you born?
I was born 1987, July 28th.
So more than likely, your Chiron is in Gemini. Okay. And Gemini rules over communication, education, information, sharing of ideas. And so when somebody has Chiron in Gemini, they have the wound of not feeling heard. And so they might do things like, you might find yourself saying things like, are you listening? Or are you hearing me? Right? Or even wanting like breakdowns where it's like, are we on the same page? Like, can we make sure that we're here? Because you'll have trauma that as you're growing up will say like, oh, what you say is not important, or you're not smart enough to talk about that, or that's dumb, or you say A and they keep saying B. You're like, no, it's A, B. No, it's A. I'm saying A. And so what it does is you'll create situations with people or jobs or whatever where you're trying to figure out ways to validate this feeling of not feeling heard. Right? And it'll show up like it creeps up on you. You're like, I got it. I hear myself. I validate myself. And then some relationship or some collaboration will happen and that wound will be turned right back on. Right? And so every time I work with people, I'm like, we have to like give this a name so that when it's coming up, you can either say, one, yes, this is happening. I'm not being heard and it's triggering me. Or two, it's not that I'm not being heard. It's that my wound is activated and I'm convincing myself that this is what's happening, right? And then figuring out like, what are the ways that you're going to deal with that? Do you need to hear yourself? Do you need to talk to like a close friend who you have a better, communicative relationship with? Like, what are some things that you can do to validate your experience and then move on from that wound? But then in the houses, you can kind of see where it becomes medicine. So like for me, I have it in the second house. And so I can make money from my wound. I can utilize it to build value or to educate, right? I've known people that have used their wound to amplify their career. They share stories about their pain and that gives them notoriety because I think, what is your rising sign?
Leo.
So you probably have
Leo, Virgo moon.
So you probably have your 10th house is in Taurus. So your wound is either somewhere in your 10th house, your career, so sharing your wound to amplify your story, and or your 11th house of relationships, where because you struggle being heard, you might be really fantastic at listening to other people. So it gives you your medicine, right? But it also tells us why certain things are happening. Because it's like, the wound, here's the wound again. Yeah.
I loved your storytelling of Chiron, this healer and this wounded healer.
Mm-hmm.
Who were the other? Is there like one other character you're like, oh, this is this?
Oh, yeah. My chart ruler, Mars is Aries. Mars is Aries, the god of war. And Mars rules over Aries in the chart. And I feel like Aries gets such a bad rep because he's such a warrior all the time, right? Like his thing is always like how to push forward, how to motivate, like it's such a driving force. that I feel like Aries gets such a bad rep, but Mars, especially in certain aspects, can be such a great trigger for like great ideas, for great conversations. It can get you back in the gym. You know what I mean? It can get you to fight for things that you believe in. And then there's a lot of lore behind Aries, Mars, in Roman mythology, also Aries, Mars, and then Venus and Aphrodite, right? And like their kind of dance. And so a lot of times people assume when these two come together, there's like, it's either, oh my gosh, it's amazing, passionate love, or oh my gosh, it's all of these crazy like tension and arguments, but there's no one way that it plays out. You always have to look at everything else that's going on. So I feel like top two stories that play out for me in astrology, it's because it's my chart ruler though. Top two are Chiron and Aries. Your chart ruler would be the sun, which is Apollo. Apollo.
Where does the image of the lion come from then? What is that?
The constellation.
Okay.
So astrology was created or like started even before Babylonian times. So the use of these chart systems and the use of the stars to like mark different events in people's lives, to check the fate of a king when he's being born, to try to time it out in particular ways, like these things were Babylonian times. This is even before the Greek mythology. But it's funny because just in the same way that we find similarities in like Mayan deities or Aztec deities and then Greek and Romans, there are parallels to how we saw those things, right? So like Aztec has Tonali, which is the sun, and then they had Apollo, which was the sun, right? And some of the stories might like change a little here and there, but the energy of them is the same. And in astrology, when you look at the constellations, one of the ways that I learned to look at like the houses, because every house is ruled by a sign and everyone's chart is different. But let's say for you, the first house is Leo. Imagine a temple that is a Leo temple. That is your first house. That is your identity. That is your avatar. And that house, that temple, if you imagined it, it'd probably be pretty warm, right? It'd probably have like gold-plated stuff everywhere. It'd probably have some really nice furniture that was like very comfortable and like nicely set. There would probably be a stage in there, more than likely, right? Like that would be the temple. And so when you look at the house, you don't want to just look at it as like, this is the house, like this is just words. You almost want to
see the image,
see what it feels like to live in that. And then as you see what it feels like, you go, oh, this is why Libra rising people are so warm and so giving and so generous. And that's why they want to share stories, and they sometimes even want to make the story even better than what it was when it actually happened, because they want to elevate it. You know, they want to make it into a myth so people remember it. You know what I mean?
Epic.
Say a Cancer, which is your opposite, the moon, a Cancer rising. Imagine their temple. It's probably dark. There's probably just one silver light. There's probably water flowing everywhere, you know, and like very soft see-through fabrics. You know, there's probably rocks and stones and crystals and things that reflect off each other, but it's not anywhere as lit as a Leo house is, right?
So fun. How would you describe a Virgo house? Because it's the moon, right?
Virgo, yeah, the Virgo house. I would describe it as a library with like leather couches and maybe some cigars and whiskey. There would probably be like some sort of like what's it called? Like when there's a capacity, like not too many people can come in.
Yeah.
Limited private capacity, you know. People are probably fairly quiet or in a corner having discussions about chess or politics or things like that. And if you're Leo rising, your moon is in your second house. So talking and doing this sort of thing, second house is your money house, is what can actually help you build value.
I love this. I mean, this is what I mean. Like, I think this is the storytelling that I think is so unique depending on the medium. you know, like you're the medium of the message or of the info, and I'm no stranger, transparently, to getting, you know, I love a good reading. I love Vedic, I love Eastern, I love uh and no one has ever described the home. You know, like what's the room look like?
Yeah.
What's the house look like? And it's such a clear way. I do have this feeling with astrology that, okay, now what? Sometimes it's like I read these books or I meet someone and they tell me all these things about myself and it's spot on. And I'm like, well, that's fucking, so I have no individuality, you know, like, oh,
Mm,
so I'm just this thing that can be read. Um, you know, you're like, damn, that is true. That's crazy.
yeah.
It's how I feel after I see a magic show and like I get called up and, you know, I did exactly what the magician wanted me to do, and I thought I was making my own choices. And he pulls out the envelope, and I wrote what he wrote the night before. You know,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is that sort of relationship?
Um, well, we have free will, you know, and everything that your chart contains, you have a way that you can express it. You can choose how you express it. I think what's great about knowing these things is that it can help you understand yourself and also make you feel less alone. But I also know that feeling of like, okay, so now what? I think that this is like a framework for what you can potentially be and what you don't also have to lean into. Um, I, as an Aries rising, can be very aggressive. I can be very assertive. I can be very sharp. And I'm not going to lie, I lean into that bossiness pretty frequently. And if I just didn't know and I was like, well, this is who I am and this is what I'm meant to be because my chart says I'm an Aries rising, right? um then it wouldn't lend itself to like me experiencing life and like having healthier relationships. So instead I'll say like, yeah, I'm going to lean towards my Gemini moon right now and just like get curious about this because I want to learn. And for me, um this kind of brings me to like another thing in the chart which I feel like is helpful with this topic, which is your north node, because your north node tells you kind of like what you came here to do, what your soul wants to learn that it hasn't learned yet. And like if you're on a trail and you have a compass and it's going north, when you're on the trail and you're trying to figure out your way to get to north, you're not always going north. Sometimes you're going like a little northeast, a little northwest. Sometimes you might have looped back around. But you're kind of trying to figure out this north. And we have all of these tools in our chart, or even oppositions, even challenges in our chart that are here to help us kind of figure out that thing, right? Um, so 87, you probably North Node in Aries. And that means that your South Node is in Libra. So that means in previous lives, you got really good at building relationships. You got really good at partnering and being diplomatic and collaborating. And then in your early life here, that was probably something you were good at. Like you could make friends, or, you could do something with your partner in your school projects. And like, that was always like kind of a comfortable space. Like, let's do it together. The Aries North Node is trying to teach you, like, how can I be more independent? How can I be more authentic? How can I be more innovative? And you'll find that every time you choose to take a leap by yourself without the partner, that the doors will open more quickly, because that's kind of what your soul is like. I want to learn this in this lifetime, right? And so when we look at our chart, we'll see these conflicting things, our wounds, or this and that. And like, I don't know how you're going to get to that authenticity or to that independence. You have to utilize the communication wound or the Virgo moon of analyzing. You have to utilize these tools to experience and teach your soul what the value is in standing on your own, in being honest. Authenticity is honesty, and honesty is really, really hard. It's not an easy thing to do. Sometimes you don't even realize you're not being honest because it's just like such a habit to like adjust, you
Yeah.
know? And so I wouldn't say like, oh, you get a chart reading. I understand that feeling of like, okay, so I'm just like a book that you can read then. We have free will in how we choose to achieve these things and what we choose to utilize. I'm a strong believer in that whole concept that like God put a mustard seed in your heart of desire, and that at the end of this, like the point is for you to cultivate that seed as much as possible to play into the bigger picture. And there's there's different ways that you can get to that Aries rising. Who am I to say that you should do it this way or that way? So we still have free will. We can still play with that.
I didn't know I always thought it was like faith the size of a mustard seed can move a mountain, but is the more accurate thing there's this mustard seed of desire that we have to fulfill?
Yeah, so I've also heard faith is the size of mustard seed, which I know is a scripture, but I've also known this, and I couldn't tell you right now specifically what it is, but that you have a desire that was placed in your heart, right? And sometimes like we'll try to define that by like, oh, I have a desire to, I don't know, be rich or be famous or whatever, but there's always something that's like figuring out that seed sometimes is hard. Like I have a desire to be honest. I have a desire to be authentic. I have a desire to be a part of a family. I have a desire to be patient. You know what I mean? Like it's usually something that's a little more of, how do I explain it? I saw this post recently and it was like a friend sent it to me and it was about multi-hyphenate artists. That's the right word, right? Multi-hyphenate artists, and how people like Donald Glover, right? They didn't stay in their lane. They chose to kind of play in different lanes because their actual goal was not necessarily to be a performer or to be a comedian or to be an actor, but it was to tell stories, to be a storyteller, right? And so I think like figuring out when you want something, like I want to be famous, like what do you want? Do you want to be loved? Do you want to be liked? Do you want to be validated? Do you want to be enough? Like what is the seed, and that's how I've heard it. And I feel like the North Node kind of gives you a little bit of insight of what that is.
Yeah, there's a spiritual tradition called Vedanta.
Mm-hmm.
And in Vedanta, the teachings say that every person comes in with an overarching desire, and we will do everything in our power to achieve that desire. And that a parent's only job is to cultivate environments where their children can fulfill their desires safely. Like that's it. It's just like, can I make spaces where you can touch these desires in a safe way?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You're going to make me cry. That's so beautiful. I hate crying. I'm an Aries rising. I always encourage parents to like chart their kids' birth charts. And one of my daughters, her North Node is in Scorpio, so her South Node is in Taurus, so she experienced a lot of comfort in previous lives. So her North Star is that she's here to experience really deep, emotional, profound like experiences, like intense joy, intense pain, intense transitions. And I've always done my best to like make her comfortable. But I've also, she's also Scorpio moon. So I've also like tried to create space for her to still have room to feel, which is hard for me because I'm a brain. I'm like, just think it through. Like, let's just find a solution. Like, you don't need to be sad about it. Like, just, let's move on. Next thing. And having her grow up and having to create that space for her to like allow her to feel pain, allow her to cry it out. Like, it makes me feel like I could do more of that. I could do more of what you're saying. And also I'm on my way,
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful. I really like that.
Yeah, Vedanta, it's a cool one. It's a little aggressive at times, but it's really cool. And a teacher who put me onto it said a great example of this in media, and it's really kind of dark, but it is a great example, is Dexter, here's this child who has this overarching desire to take life. And the father says, why don't we do it in a safe way? Why don't we do it, to the people who we say are bad? Like, has nourished this desire in a safe way. And the teacher was like, and there's always this opportunity to experience your desire in a safe way. And that even as adults, if we don't have the parents around, there are probably desires that we're afraid to even go after because we don't know if they're safe or not. And so that's where creativity comes in. Can I touch these desires in safe ways?
Yeah. Do you know what yours is?
For a long time, I knew my questions. That's the other thing. As an artist, I believe all artists are trying there's one overarching question that you want to answer. And for a long time, my question was, why do we do the things we know are wrong for us, but we do them anyway?
Mm.
That was
Okay.
my question in most of my art. My question has evolved now, and I think my question is, yeah, it's a good question. It's it's a good question. What is my new question? Because I care less about that question now. Um, Mine is one of, it's deeply, deeply related to liberation. It really is. It's deeply, deeply related to loving, like deep, generous loving everyone, like
Mm.
everybody. Like
Mm-hmm.
no one's excluded. You know, you love the Coke can like you love your mother. Like everyone gets the love. There's
Yeah.
something about that because that has been something I haven't been really able to give to myself, and I believe in this reciprocal. Like, if I can honestly love myself, I can love another deeply. If I can really love another deeply, I know there's an ability for me to love myself deeply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the art I'm making these days. Is like, I keep wanting to make art in my live shows where people fall in love with each other and they fall in love with their life.
Mm. Yeah. So
That's
love,
something. Yeah.
love, liberation. I think that's important right now. I think that's for what's going on in the world right now,
Yeah.
which is a little tricky
That's a
because
trip.
we are really stuck in our, but I think it's hard because it's like a broader conversation, but like in mundane astrology, there's a lot of transits that are speaking to conflict, like conflict of ideas, conflict of thoughts, power. Like there's, one of the bigger transits we're dealing with right now has to do with the transition of power to the collective.
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
Pluto moving into Aquarius and like this kind of, we're in the thick of it right now, or the early thick of it, because it still is like really early. Um, and I'm seeing this really cool trend because I think to access what you're talking about, people have to get out of their heads. They have to get out of like the part of them that's
We're
like,
going to get back to getting out. Yeah.
this is what works, right? And so I'm really enjoying more of an awakening around people tapping into their nervous system, because I think that's an access point for you to start going like, oh, my brain doesn't have the answers, but my body is has some answers that I can explore, right? So um it's happening. I'm seeing it happening more so with like the people around me, which is great, and I think that means it's slowly spreading. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for it to become like common language. um but I think with the transits that are happening, so if there's an astrologer listening, like Pluto in Aquarius and then Uranus moving into Gemini, dipping back into Taurus, coming back to Gemini, I think there's this like movement that's happening underneath all of the noise, where people are going like, what's happening in my body? My body is telling me something. And usually because we're all so stuck in survival mode, and you're being overproductive, that's a survival mode, right? Or like when you're totally locked down and you're like doom scrolling, that's a survival mode. And so I'm
Mm.
seeing more people wake up and go, oh, my body is informing a lot more than my brain. So how do I go into this? And I think once you can actually drop down, you can actually tap in to compassion and love and connection, because then your brain's out of it.
Mm.
Because your brain just wants to solve it, wants to make sense of it, wants a definition. It wants, what is this? What are we? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Instead of just being and enjoying it, you know? So,
I told you my buddy who was, while we were climbing, he's looking at my chart,
mm,
and so the thing he said was, when he changed the house division from whole to Placidus,
mhm,
my whole signs, with whole signs, or with whole sign houses, my sun and Mars are in the first house. With Placidus, they're in the 12th. And then he goes, that's the house of undoing.
mhm,
And he was like, and I was like, that's ominous. But then I was like, that's it. That's my question. I would love to undo myself. I think a lot of my work as an artist, if I'm writing, if I'm performing, if I'm creating, it's to undo this me quality.
mm,
And I believe there is more love in me when I'm less me, and I'm more us.
Mm-hmm.
Like this house of undoing was really something that's been so invigorating for me to
Yeah.
undo myself.
Yeah. 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 There's a lot of names for that house. If you think about it, I mean, it is the house of undoing, but it's like a deep subconscious. So if the first house is your identity, then the 12th house is what's going on in the back that we can't see. It's things that are hard for us to see. So subconscious in ancient astrology, they also would call it the house of misery
Mm,
because you could find like your bad habits there. It's also the house of hidden enemies. Like there's a lot of that can go on in that house. But it's interesting because having sun in the 12th. So imagine this really dark house. It's meant to be dark because it's your subconscious, but you were born with the sun in that house. So you're meant to bring light to what other people can't see.
mm-hmm.
And usually the 12th house is also linked to our ancestry. So it's also bringing light to things that maybe your lineage refused to see.
Mm,
Now you're like, all right, we got to clean this up. We got to look at this. So if you have Leo in the 12th a little bit, then it could be themes of like looking at how pride got in the way, how ego got in the way, how identity got in the way, how being performative can be hurtful sometimes, like all of these other things. But yeah, sun in the 12th house is actually considered like a psychic placement because you could see in the dark.
see in the dark. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap, any last words, but also please let people know, because I'm letting humans know that after this, I'm hiring you for a reading of all the kinds.
Yeah.
So any last words, but also how do people hang out with you, know you, listen to you, share things with you, etc.?
If you want to find me, I'm usually on Instagram at moon_chola. You can also email me moonchola@gmail.com. As far as last words,
Last
for me
words,
right
last
now,
questions, last ideas, anything. Yeah.
I think that we're in a year of a lot of endings, and that's very, very tough. We're having to let go of a lot of our perfectionist tendencies. So I would say, like, for myself and for everyone, like, what does it feel like and what could it feel like to exist as your most authentic self without all of the perfectionist, judgmental, critical limitations that we put on ourselves? Imagine that world, because we're collectively manifesting the new world, and I would hope that in the future we get to live in a world where we get to be whoever that desire mustard seed self wants to be, you know?
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah.
May we all have that strength and courage.
Yeah. What a Leo rising thing to say. I love it. Oh, yeah. Awesome.
I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
Thank you too. I had a great time and I appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
All right, y'all. Make sure to check out Moon Chola on Instagram. Book a session, book many sessions at moon_chola. There you will find a link to have a reading, a tarot reading, or an astrology birth chart reading, and many other things. All right, much love. Peace. I'll see you next week.